Lieutenant Cade Rowan jolted awake as his quarters door hissed open, the soft blue emergency lighting casting shadows across his small cabin. He sat up quickly, expecting a medical emergency or ship alert, but instead found himself staring at a tall figure silhouetted in the doorway. "I thought this was the hydro chamber," came a soft, melodic voice tinged with embarrassment. As his eyes adjusted, Cade saw her clearly, Sarah T., the Zalari linguist who joined their Deep Space Alliance vessel 3 weeks ago. Her pale purple skin seemed to shimmer in the dim light, and her dark curly hair fell in loose waves around her shoulders. She stood frozen, her hands clasped nervously in front of her, clearly mortified by her mistake. "Easy mistake," Cade said gently, swinging his legs over the side of his bunk. "The corridor layouts can be confusing. The hydro chamber is 2 doors down." Sarah T. nodded but didn't move. In the low light, he could see the exhaustion etched across her delicate features. Her usually bright violet eyes looked dim, and there was a slight tremor in her hands. "You all right?" he asked, standing slowly so as not to startle her. "The ship." She began, then stopped, wrapping her arms around herself. "The sounds, the vibrations, they're different from our vessels. I haven't been sleeping well." Cade understood. He'd heard from other crew members that the Zalari were particularly sensitive to environmental changes. The constant hum of the engines, the recycled air, even the artificial gravity, it all felt foreign when you were far from home. "Look," he said, gesturing to his bunk, "why don't you rest here for a bit? I was about to head to the observation deck anyway. Night shift's quiet there." Sarah T. hesitated, conflict clear in her expression. "I couldn't impose." "You're not imposing. We're all just trying to get through this mission together." After a long moment, she nodded gratefully. She moved to the bunk with graceful, measured steps, settling onto the edge before gradually lying down. The tension in her shoulders seemed to ease almost immediately. Cade grabbed his jacket and paused at the door. "Take as long as you need." As he left, he caught a glimpse of Sarah T. already drifting towards sleep, her breathing becoming deep and even for the first time since she'd boarded their ship. Cade returned to his quarters near dawn, expecting to find them empty. Instead, Sarah T. lay curled on his bunk, her dark hair spread across his pillow like spilled ink. She looked peaceful, more relaxed than he'd ever seen her during their brief interactions in the corridors or mess hall. She stirred as he entered, violet eyes blinking open with momentary confusion before awareness returned. A deep blush colored her pale purple cheeks. "I'm sorry, I must have," she began, sitting up quickly. "Don't apologize," Cade said softly. "You needed the rest." Their eyes met briefly before Sarah T. looked away, smoothing down her rumpled uniform. "Thank you," she whispered, then slipped past him and out the door without another word. For the next 3 days, ship routine continued normally. Cade caught glimpses of Sarah T. in the linguistics lab, her focus intense as she worked on translation protocols. But dark circles still shadowed her eyes, and he noticed her hands shake slightly when she thought no one was watching. Then, on the 4th night, his door chimed softly. Cade looked up from his data pad to find Sarah T. standing in the entrance, this time fully awake and clearly intentional in her visit. "I was wondering." She started, then stopped, fidgeting with the sleeve of her sleep clothes. "Would it be terribly presumptuous if I asked to rest here again? Just for a few hours?" Instead of answering, Cade simply moved his things from the desk chair and gestured toward the bunk. "Of course." This time, she didn't hesitate. As she settled under the covers, Cade dimmed the lights and returned to his reading. The quiet companionship felt natural, comfortable in a way that surprised him. "Cade?" Her voice was drowsy. "Yeah. The vibrations here, they're different. Steadier. Like a heartbeat." He glanced over to find her eyes already closed, her breathing beginning to slow. Within minutes, she was asleep, and Cade found himself watching the gentle rise and fall of her chest, wondering why this felt so right when everything about it should have been strange. 2 weeks passed, and Sarathi's nightly visits became routine. She would arrive around 2,200 hours, sometimes with a book, sometimes simply seeking the sanctuary his quarters provided. They developed an unspoken understanding. She would rest, he would work quietly at his desk, and neither questioned the arrangement. But gradually, things began to shift. It started with small conversations. Sarathi would arrive earlier, lingering awake to tell him about her day or ask about human customs. Cade found himself looking forward to these moments, drawn to her thoughtful observations and the musical quality of her voice. "Your species dreams in colors," she mentioned one evening, settling cross-legged on his bunk. "Ours dream in harmonies. I wonder what it would be like to hear your dreams." "What do you mean?" Cade asked, moving from his desk to sit on the edge of the bunk, closer than usual. "The way thoughts translate across our minds, it's like music. But humans process differently. Your emotions have different textures." She reached out unconsciously as she spoke, her fingertips barely brushing his hand. The contact sent an unexpected warmth through Cade's chest. He didn't pull away, and neither did she. Her skin was softer than he'd imagined, with a subtle warmth that seemed to pulse gently. "Show me," he said quietly. Sarathi's eyes widened slightly, but she didn't retreat. Instead, she placed her palm fully against his, their fingers interlacing. "Close your eyes." When he did, he felt something extraordinary, not quite telepathy, but an emotional resonance, like hearing a distant song that perfectly matched his mood. He could sense her contentment, her curiosity, and underneath it all, something deeper and more complex. "That's beautiful," he whispered. When he opened his eyes, Sarathi was watching him intently, her face closer than before. "You're the first human to understand it so clearly." They stayed like that, hands linked, until she finally drifted to sleep. But this time, Cade found himself lying down beside her, maintaining that precious connection even in dreams. 3 nights later, the careful boundaries they'd maintained finally dissolved. Sarathi arrived earlier than usual, tension radiating from her slender frame. "We received communications from the Zalari homeworld today," she said without preamble. "My assignment here may be extended indefinitely. The cultural exchange program, it's more crucial than we initially understood." Cade looked up from his reports, immediately sensing her distress. "That's good news, isn't it? Your work here is important." "It means I may never see my home again," she said quietly, sinking onto his bunk. "The distances are so vast, and our resources so limited. This might be a one-way journey." Without thinking, Cade moved to sit beside her, close enough that their thighs touched. "I'm sorry. That must be terrifying." She leaned into him then, her head finding the hollow of his shoulder. "Is it wrong that part of me isn't entirely devastated by the news?" "Why would it be wrong?" "Because I've found something here I never expected." She lifted her head to look at him, vulnerability written across her features. "Someone." The air between them seemed to shimmer with possibility. Cade reached up to trace the curve of her cheek with his fingertips, marveling at the silky texture of her skin. "Sarathi," he whispered. She answered by closing the distance between them, her lips meeting his in a kiss that was both tentative and certain. Her mouth was warm and soft, tasting faintly of the Zalari tea she favored. When they parted, both were breathing unsteadily. "I've wanted this for weeks," Cade admitted. "So have I." What followed was a slow exploration of boundaries and desires. Hands learning new textures, mouths discovering sensitive places, bodies finding rhythms that transcended species. Sarathi's pale purple skin seemed to glow in the dim light, and when she gasped his name, it sounded like music. They made love with the patience of those who had waited too long and the passion of those who might not have forever. The morning after changed everything, though neither spoke of it immediately. Sarathi woke in Cade's arms, her dark curls tickling his chest, and for the first time since boarding the ship, she looked completely at peace. "I should go," she murmured, but made no move to leave. "Should you?" Cade asked, pressing a kiss to the top of her head. She tilted her face up to meet his gaze. What are we doing, Cade? I don't know, he answered honestly. But I know I don't want it to stop. Over the following days, Sarah T began leaving small personal items in his quarters, a change of clothes, her translation pad, a small crystal that hummed softly and helped her sleep. She never asked permission, and Cade never questioned it. It felt natural, like pieces of a puzzle finally clicking into place. The crew began to notice, of course. Shared glances in the mess hall, the way they unconsciously gravitated toward each other during briefings, how Sarathi's perpetual exhaustion had transformed into a quiet radiance. But in the close quarters of a deep space vessel, privacy was respected, and love, however unconventional, was cherished. One evening, nearly a month after that first accidental encounter, Cade returned to his quarters to find Sarah T rearranging the small space to accommodate both their belongings. She looked up when he entered, a slight uncertainty in her expression. I hope you don't mind, she said. I spoke with the quartermaster about making this arrangement official. Cade set down his gear and crossed to her, pulling her into his arms. Mind? I was wondering how long you were going to keep pretending this was temporary. She laughed, the sound like wind chimes in a gentle breeze. No more knocking. No more knocking, he confirmed, sealing the promise with a kiss. In the vast emptiness of space, surrounded by stars that seemed impossibly distant, they had found something rare and precious, a home that existed not in any place, but in the space between two hearts learning to beat in harmony.